Alright, so here's my deck profile for my wind-up deck for the October 2014 format. So I definitely feel that this is the best approach to playing wind-ups at this point, but in terms of the particulars, this deck definitely needs more testing in terms of exact card choice. This isn't my main deck this format. I'm playing ninjas mostly, so I don't have as much testing as I did in past formats. I don't feel like windups is competitively viable, mostly because Shadows is such a bad matchup, and both Burning Abyss and Stellar Knights are also pretty tough. I'm only playing the deck casually this format, so I'm not putting as much time into the testing. So obviously you got your standard 11 windups, and the other number is wrong. There's not really any reason to run anything besides those 11, and you need all of them. So that's how it's going to be for the foreseeable future until they potentially release new ones. They are coming out with new wind-up support in Secrets of Eternity, or they move Magician up to higher numbers than 1. Then we'll need to tweak the lineup a bit. And then rounding out the monsters, I've got 2 Kuribandits and 1 Grand Mole. Kuribandit, I think, is really critical right now to getting to your wind-up factories as fast as possible. The main way that this deck can compete with a really strong meta decks that continuously maintain card advantage is with factory. So we need to get to factory as quickly as possible. And Kuribandit goes through 5 cards of your deck, potentially getting you a factory. If it doesn't get you a factory, it's 5 turns closer to your next factory. So it speeds up your deck a lot. It only costs you 1 normal summon to get this amazing effect. So it's definitely worth it here. I'm not playing 3 because 3 can clog a little bit. You only have so many normal summons to go around. And then I'm playing 1 Grand Mole. This is mostly a meta call. Grand Mole is excellent at getting rid of Shadow Fusion monsters, and Winda can cause problems. Grand Mole is also good in other matchups because it can bounce any extra deck monster for a +1, and it's also really good at bouncing set monsters and not letting them get their flip effects or sending them to the grave. And then you can attack with another monster if you have 2 on the field. So that rounds up the monsters. That's only 14, but you really don't want very many monsters in this deck, as few as possible, because once you get to your factory, you're going to be adding a bunch to your hand, and the more monsters you draw, the less cards you can play. And that's the spells. 3 factories, obvious. This is the heart and soul of the deck. Factory is what makes the deck function. And then I'm playing 1 Tenki. This is just to get to my rabbit faster because I want to make my deck as consistent as possible. More Tenkis could potentially be dead, and I end up clogging my back row. So I'm only playing 1. If I played more than 1, I would want to play Bear to clear them out, but Bear is not very good this format, so I don't really want to play Bear. Now I'm playing 2 Duality for consistency. 2 is the optimal number. You avoid dead drawing multiples, and you get to it as much as possible. This is definitely a must in the wind-up deck. And then 3 Upstart. Upstart takes away the deck's ability to OTK, which is unfortunate. So just 1 Upstart, you won't be able to OTK anymore unless you get an attack in for over 1,000 life points. So like a rabbit attack will be enough. So sometimes when you have early game rabbits with your factories to build up your OTK, it doesn't actually matter, but it can matter, which is why I didn't play Upstart before. But I feel like at this point, sacrificing the OTK for the sake of consistency is worth it. That you really need to get to that factory as quickly as possible. 1 Soul Charge. You can play 2 in a Kuribandit build, but it's pushing it in other builds to play 2. 1 is the optimal number, I think, because if you draw Soul Charge without having a Kuribandit set up, then it's dead early game, and you have to wait to mid game to play it. And also, this deck can sometimes lose a lot of life points, especially between time space and dodging attacks with Wind Up Rabbit. So, Soul Charge can be absolutely amazing in this deck. It can also be totally dead. So, it's definitely worth playing the 1, but it being hit to 1 doesn't hurt this deck as much as it does other decks. And then 2 MST, helping my plays get off. It's not as good against some matchups, but with Vanities so prevalent, that makes MST worth playing. One Warning and one Compulse, the two best traps right now. Two Time Space Trap Holes. This hits extra deck monsters, including the Shadow Fusions, so it has lots of versatility over other traps. For example, Bottomless doesn't work on Winda or on Dante, whereas Time Space works on both of those. And this also hits things like Judgment Dragon that summon from the hand. So I find it to be good in the deck. It covers for a lot of the weak points that it has. Two, Breakthrough Skill. I don't think Breakthrough Skill is as good in general as Fiendish Chain, but this is much better against Winda because you can use it from the grave to negate Winda, and then you can go off. You can also mill this with a Kuribandit, and then you get extra advantage out of that. Two-Dimensional Prison. I think battle traps are pretty bad, but they're kind of needed in a wind-up deck. And Prison is leagues better than Mirror Force at this point. They're not even close to each other in terms of how good they are. Prison is just totally better. And then Triple Vanities. This is really good against the meta right now. If you can set up and have a Vanity set, then your opponent will have a tough time fighting back. This is also just really good as a one-for-one out to a lot of your opponent's moves. If you need to get set up still, you could still use this as a one-for-one to prevent your opponent from killing you, or from getting their Shadow Fusions out or whatever. And then one called the Haunted, just for a little bit extra oomph late game when you're starting to run out of monsters. This is really good for bringing back rats for instant X-Seed plays. And then two, Wiretap, for helping your plays get off. I think Wiretap is better than Trap Stun in this deck, mostly because Wiretap hits counter traps. And it also gets floodgate cards off the field, like Goes in Match or Rivalry of Warlords, which can cause you problems. Honestly though, the part of the deck that's the most subject to change based off of testing would be the trap lineup. So that's probably where you will find that there are better options. But I like how this has been working for me so far. The only problem I've had is sometimes I don't draw enough traps. I don't think I can really afford to play more than 14 now. It's probably just because I'm used to playing 20 trap card decks with my ninjas having 20 traps. And then for the side, I'm playing two of the Fire and Ice hand, so I can side those in against matchups where these two cards are good. To do that, you would side out the two Kuribandits, Grand Mole, and then one other card. You don't want to have more than 15 monsters, so you want to make sure you side these guys out if you're putting these in. One MST, obvious, hits floodgate stuff. One Deep Fissure, doesn't hurt our deck at all, shuts down grave decks. One Regeki, this is really bad against the top 3 meta decks, but it is good against rogue decks, so you want to have it against them. And then the same thing for Torrential and Bottomless. You don't want either of these against the top 3 decks, but you want them against most rogue decks, so they're in the side. And then one Breakthrough Skill, just more effect negation if you need it. You probably want to put this in against Shadows because Winda causes you so much problems. And then double Light Imprisoning and double Shadow Imprisoning, obviously for Satellar Knights, Boojins, Lightsworns, etc., Shadows, Burning Abyss, etc. And then Soul Drain, Grave decks, it doesn't hurt you at all. And then extra deck is almost the same as before. So for rank 3s, you got Alucard, Levier, Evoker, Engineer, Acid Golem, and Zen Mins. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory. The one I see used the least often is probably Acid Golem, but sometimes you really do need that 3000 attack. It's pretty important. This is also one of the best cards you can play when your opponent is using Skill Drain against you. And then for the rank 4s, Abyss Dweller, Double Castel, Direwolf, Silent Honor Arc, and Pack Operative. The new addition is obviously Castel. I don't think he was out yet when I did my previous deck profile. I played one of these for a while, but Castel is probably the most frequently used monster in the extra deck, so you kind of need two against a lot of decks. It's just really good at spinning stuff back, and this is your go-to guy a lot of times. Direwolf and Papal Operative are self-explanatory in a wind-up deck, and Abyss Dweller is just good in every rank 4 deck, and Honor Arc I feel like isn't as needed for its effect anymore because Castel does it better. But I use Honor Arc a lot because it has the two materials that it can use to protect itself. So it's basically like a beat stick that can be destroyed twice before you have to take it off the field. So that's how it's mostly useful at this point. And if you can use its effect to do the same thing as Castel, then you might as well, because you get the 100 extra attack plus the resistance to destruction. And then for rank 5s, I'm running Bulbasaurus and Terrace plus the Guy Dragon, and those are pretty self-explanatory. So, hopefully you enjoyed the deck profile. That was my wind-up deck. If you did, be sure to check out some of my other stuff.